Thank you, Phil. Obviously, Phil is a very tough act to follow. Before I get into what I kind of thought about for this thing, I did get some questions that were very good questions that they would like for me to kind of answer. And if you excuse me while I put my glasses on so I can read everything. The first one Connie came up with is kind of a multiple part thing, so I'll kind of break it down. What are your personal, educational, and career background shape you into an entrepreneur? Well, I'll give you a little quick background. You know, I grew up, my parents owned a small traveling carnival and a dirt stock car racetrack, and I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. And my grandparents, I was born in '38, so it goes back a ways. My grandparents lived on a small farm. I got to go out and milk the cow every morning. We had no electricity. I'd go out and pump the water, carry it in. And you were given a lot of responsibility. When I was 5, for Christmas, they gave me a 22 pump rifle. Can you imagine that in today's world? So all the time I was with my rifle, and if I shot a rabbit or a squirrel, my grandmother cleaned it, and I felt taller than Phil, okay? It made me feel important. And an awful lot of it is building confidence. Well, I went through high school. I went to Ohio State, and luckily I majored in comprehensive science and education. And after that, I taught chemistry, physics, first year biology, second year biology, algebra, business math. And then when I turned 25, I became the youngest high school principal in the state of Ohio. And it was a really nice high school. I stayed in that for 3 years, and I was actually offered to have the county superintendent job if I would stay, but I had built an amusement ride in my spare time and licensed a company out in Wichita, and just financially it made much more sense to go work for them, and that got me started in the amusement business. My master's work was, I went to Bowling Green State University, and I had a double major, secondary school administration and guidance counseling. So all these things is try to get the kids to play in lots of different sandboxes, get lots of different experiences. And I am all about, this will sound crazy, encouraging people to make mistakes. And I'll try to explain that. When I hire someone for any of my companies, the last 2 things I say, there's 2 ways you can get fired around here real fast. One, don't get along with everybody. Now, I don't care if you have a squabble. I want it to be over an hour or 2, but I don't want to live in a cat fight. I want to have things smooth. And secondly, I tell them, don't make any mistakes. And they look at me like I've lost my mind, okay? What I'm really saying is, only reason I'm hiring you, you have skills, you have background, you have knowledge, I don't. I want you not to be afraid to go out and push the envelope. Push it to its limits. You are going to make mistakes. I am going to back you. I don't expect the same dumb mistakes over and over. I expect you to learn from your mistakes. I gave a speech about a month ago to about 100 Clemson graduate students. And I walked into class, I said, you know, without question, I'm the smartest person in here. They thought I was going to brag about something. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm older than any of you. I've had more time to make mistakes, and I promise I've made more mistakes than probably half of you in here combined. So you have to push the envelope on everything, and don't be afraid. And I think one of the changing times in my life is when I started out, I was going to major in chemistry, and I didn't like the smell of the lab during the spring of the year, and then I decided I was going to major in forestry, and I realized I'd be stuck out where there was no one, and I thought, what do I want to do? I thought, well, I will major in education. That way, I got the summers to try whatever I want, and back then there was an extreme shortage of teachers, especially science teachers, and as a result, if I fail, I can still feed my family. So I took the mindset of push the envelope. Don't be afraid to try. And I'm still doing that. Going on with their question, what tools, skills, knowledge, and mindset do you think young people as early as elementary and middle school need today to successfully create and run a business? Remember, education is my background, and the biggest thing I got against education is we bore the hell out of kids. I have spent a tremendous amount of time traveling overseas. I've lived for a month at a time in remote villages of Russia and also remote villages of China. We have home in Argentina, so I've seen a lot of it. And we go where this country gets all excited about child labor. Hell, those kids are working with their parents. They're happier than our kids that we brutally put in a seat and tell them to be a tape recorder and repeat what you hear. Our kids aren't tape recorders. Our kids need to be pushed to do a lot more. They are 1,000 times more capable than, than we give them credit for. The best class I ever taught, this was back when you didn't have administration telling you what to do. You could do whatever you wanted. I had a small class, 12 students. I taught all of them chemistry the year before, so I knew the kids. These were the cream of the crop. I walked in the first day, I said, okay, here's the rules. You all got A's every grading period and for the year. Okay? What do you want to do? Within 2 months, they had finished the textbook. I was taking some night courses at Bowling Green, and the back of my car was full of books every time I came back twice a week. These kids, there were 24 first place science prizes throughout state of 800 high schools. Our little high school got 11 of them. The kids just unbelievable what they can do. So if you really give them the opportunity, they can do that. I'm in the process of writing a book. I've been doing research on this for about 5 years, nothing to do with all the patent stuff I did. And I come across this idea. I'd taken my son. We were in southwest China, and I thought he'd been choked with a silver spoon, so I took him. We lived in 5 different really remote villages where people have nothing. We lived in the houses, and I noticed that the same percentage of people were happy there as my rich friends. Okay, now, what determines happiness? Remember my background is science. I'm all about evolution. We evolved, whether you like it or not, in tribes of 20 to 40 people over eons. And whether you look at how people evolved or look at any group, herd, or whatever of animals, there's no room for fat. Meaning there's no room to keep people within your tribe that are not contributing. Okay? So the tribes that evolved to get rid of the people that did not contribute, they survived. The ones that kept the people that were not contributed, they didn't have enough food to go around, and the stronger tribe took over their land. Bottom line is, one group's DNA made it down the line, one group's DNA is not here. So I am 100% convinced that we're hardwired in our DNA. We are wired that we must be needed. The title of the book will be Need to be Needed. It's really the perceived need to be needed. And if you're not needed, you're not going to be happy. You're going to get depressed. They just came out the other day in the news, the #1 disease of people on welfare and on unemployment is depression. Okay? To be happy, you have to perceive you're needed. And the more you look at it, the more you see it. The people that are workaholics is because they're needed. They're not working for the money. Do you think of school teachers that really love teaching? They know their students need them. Why do you think people put all the years in becoming a doctor and work ridiculous hours? We say it's for the money? No, it's not. It's because they perceive they're needed. So your happiness is tied to that. One other thing that's really, really critical about this, your immune system is directly tied to your perceiving you're being needed. You can ask any family doctor, somebody works in a factory their whole life, 65, they retire, they don't have much to do, they don't feel needed. Doctor will tell you, 24 months, they're dead. Some disease takes over. So your need to be needed, you take all the older people you know that are not doing well, typically it's because they don't perceive to be needed. I could go on and talk about need to be needed from now on, but that's a critical thing. If you can make your employees feel needed, they will give you 100%. And when they don't feel needed, they're looking around for another job. Next one from Lori Morton. If you could go back to age 25 again, what would you do differently? Well, at age 25, I was first-year high school principal. Green as grass, but whatever. You know, if I look back on my life, I thought about this. There's not a day went by, there wasn't little things I'd change, but overall, I wouldn't change anything, except maybe one thing. My wife sitting here, we've been married slightly over 10 years now. I would have met her earlier, okay? Next, what pitfalls should a beginning entrepreneur seek to avoid? Thinking about this, I would say, and this will sound strange because I do everything backwards, listening to other people's advice. But I'm going to add on to that without listening to counter advice. And I'm going to add on to that without trusting what you have between your ears. And what I'm saying is, when you get into any business, for example, I have been very, very involved in designing a really big wind turbine. Gee, there's a whole bunch I don't know, like the internal structure on a blade, okay? Well, what do? I ask someone that builds wind turbine blades. I ask someone that builds glider airplane blades. I ask someone who actually designs jet fighter wing blades, and I listen to all of them. But I'm not going to do what any of them says. I'm going to simulate it and put it in here. In fact, one of my very best friends, I built amusement rides for 18 years and ran some other businesses at the same time. One of my very best friends was a local attorney, still best friend, but he handled all kinds of litigation between corporations. That's the kind of a lawyer he was. So anytime I wanted to do something in business, I'd always take him to lunch, and I can promise you he would tell me everything was wrong with doing what I should do. Now, other people I talk to, and I tell them this idea, that's the best thing since sliced bread, you're going to make $1 million. Well, bottom line is, neither one of them should a young entrepreneur be listened to. You should listen to both of them, but then trust what you have here, okay? Let me show a few of the things I'm working on right now. Can you kick those front lights off? Or you know how
They'll go to sleep if we do.
Okay, never mind. All right. First, this is one of the inventions that we made a lot of these. This is a semi-trailer that has 12 slide-out basic little motel rooms. They're heated, they're air-conditioned, they can have a single or bunk beds in them. They all have a shower, sink, toilet. The trailer holds gray water and black water. Some of them we built had up on the gooseneck a generator and a big propane tank. Some of them, I mean, there were various versions, but all of them had 12 units. Well, it really did well. We sold them to traveling carnivals, circuses, railroads bought a lot of them for remote, they're working on a bridge, whatever, for crews. We even sold a bunch of them to the Kuwait military. They were painted camouflage, okay? So the problem with them, it wasn't a problem with these, but it started a whole new industry. And the industry came about because all the little travel trailer companies were stick building, basically a copycat of that, okay? Wasn't as nice, but it cost half as much. Well, guess who ends up getting the market? And now, there's 400 or 500 traveling carnivals, and almost all their employees live in either this version or there's a lot more of the stick built. But that started a new industry. The next one is my oldest son and I were scuba diving off of the Cayman Islands. And one good thing I did that all of you should consider doing with your kids. I've got 5 kids. My wife has 1. But all 5 kids, I've taken them to exotic vacations someplace in the world, one at a time, spend a week with them doing crazy things. Well, my oldest son and I, we were in Cayman Islands. We go to the North Shore where people don't die because it's too rough, but you can snorkel out about a city block and the wall drops down a few thousand feet. It's actually about 80 feet deep to the bottom, and then there's just the shelf right there. So we would do a daytime dive, and then we'd go back and do a midnight dive. When we come in from the daytime dive, we were sitting on the beach having a drink, and somehow or another we talked about it's so expensive to build an artificial coral reef. There's 2 kinds of reefs out there. There's artificial coral reefs that are designed to be a coral reef, and then there's one that's somebody's junk, whether it's an old bridge, an old ship, an old car, whatever. Okay, but the best by far is the designer version. But the designer was so expensive because you build them in the factory and you could only take them out on nice days, lower them down by cream. So we said, why not just take a rubber ball and put concrete around it and float it out and let the air out of the ball. Well, that kind of was the start of it. And, we ended up making molds. And now he's put down almost 1 million of these of all sizes all over the world in 4 or 5 different industries. He's got distributors all over the world. He's gotten every major environmental award. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, if you watch television, Verizon Telephone has a 30-second ad that's running on all the stations because they're putting a lot of these reef balls in New York Harbor, and Verizon's developed a thing to measure the clarity of water because oysters and clams collect on these and filter the water. Chesapeake Bay is going crazy putting these down. They got a version that they actually, and it's a big business in Florida, marketed through all the funeral homes, and people take the cremated remains, mix it with the concrete, and take them out, and they put thousands of these, and they build actual artificial reefs. They put a plaque on them, and that has been a big business. They put rows of them in certain places. Dominican Republic has really gotten going on this. They have many rocky beaches in front of the resorts. They put these out and they break up big waves. The bottom line is big waves take sand away from beach, little waves put sand on beach. And the before and after pictures, aerial pictures, are unbelievable. It's either a rocky beach or a sandy beach. But anyway, the reef ball business is doing well. And you can see some balls that just down, here is a ball that's been down 3 years. Depends on where they are. They can get soft coral, but they also have a system of transplanting a little broken off hard coral. And some coral grows very slow, but some hard coral grows, 6, 7, 8 inches a year. So I've seen 2-year-old reefs that you can't even tell it's an artificial reef anymore. And they can put these where there's just sand. But that's been quite an ongoing business. Oops, let me go back. Whoops, I got a slide to get back, is that right? Yeah. There we go. Those are oysters. And the reason they really got started putting those in Chesapeake Bay is the oyster fishermen have basically overfished the oysters because an oyster has to be so big before it has eggs. And they were getting most of them before they were big enough to spawn. So they set aside areas that they couldn't gather oysters. Of course, you know what the oyster fishermen did at night? They went in there where the big oysters are. So that didn't work. So they started putting down reef balls with oysters attached to the reef balls, and they can't get them off. So the oysters grow big and make eggs and make babies, and everybody's happy. Yes, Phil?
Jerry, let me ask a question in this piece, because I know this is something that's important to you, and we might lose it if we don't ask it here. And that is, when I listen to that story, I might imagine that I went from Jerry and his son drinking a drink on the beach to 1 million reef balls a week, a month, a year, multiple years later. But I know that you're about execution. Something got built. Can you talk a little bit about the story about how that gets built? How do you go from having an idea to knowing it works to finding the customer component of that?
Well, this is true. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to be talking to 97 Clemson graduate students, all engineers, that want some information on creativity, and they have their capstone projects and so forth. And here's kind of what I will say to them. There's a lot of great ideas out there. All you got to do, and I've done this before, go be a judge at a junior or middle school science fair. Lots of good ideas. And a lot of them are actually could be patented, okay? But just getting an idea and just getting a patent, that's just the first step. As I say, nothing happens till someone sells something. I'll give you a perfect example. I invented the free fall ride. And I says, okay, I was building rides. I owned a company. This was too big for my company to build. I didn't have enough money because it was going to be a multi-million-dollar extra project. So I thought, okay, who can manufacture it and sell it? Well, let's start with the cream of the crop. The biggest company in the world that makes big rides is in Switzerland. The name of the company is Intamin. So I thought, now how in the hell am I going to get Intamin sold? Because I know if I send an idea to engineering at Intamin, engineers are going to look at it, and it's not their job, not their idea, and an engineer's job is to find what's wrong. And almost all the time, it dies. If I send it to the salespeople, what do the salespeople say? Well, I got all kinds of good customers that has ideas they want us to build. Why are we talking to someone who's not one of my customers? So it dies. So what I did is I waited to the trade show. There's an annual world, it's in Orlando, Florida, this year in late November. All the manufacturers in the world are there, all the amusement parks are there. It's a huge show. It fills up all the convention center in Orlando. And so what I do is I go down and I think I had 2 pieces of paper, okay? Keep it very simple. One was a painting and one was a little bit of information on it. I go up to one of the girls in the booth and I said, is the president of the company here? A president always goes to the biggest trade show of the year of that industry. Of course, may I speak to him? Well, you'll have to make an appointment because you come back in an hour and a half. I think I can arrange that. So I go back an hour and a half. She says, you got 10 minutes with him. We go back in the little booth and I said, tell him who I was, and I had this idea for a amusement ride. Here's a picture of it. And very interestingly, I was very careful to tell him what was wrong with the idea. And only told him a little bit about what was right with the idea. Mostly the things that were not obvious. Now, he puts it in his briefcase. 2 or 3 weeks later, got a call, I want to talk. Now here's what happens when you do that. He goes back and he pulls in some of his engineering people and some of his sales people. He says, oh, some guy came up with me at the trade show and he's already got copies of what I've gave to him, and they all got a picture of it. And engineer says, well, here's one thing wrong. He says, I already know that because I'd already told him. So I'm cutting off the engineers. Okay? Now, salesmen are afraid to say too much to him because, both of them are afraid to say too much to him because he's the boss. And I left out some of the things that were benefits because I didn't want those ideas to be mine. I didn't want to be on a piece of paper. I wanted to be his idea. I wanted to be creative. They're obvious. He'll figure them out after he thinks about this for half an hour. Now, it's his idea. He's given to a sales and engineer, and I got royalties as long as the patent, till the patent expired, which was allowed. Intamin did the try. In fact, I was telling Phil this morning, the first one I did not get royalties on was the Tower of Terror, because Disney wanted to build it a little differently than Intamin were building them. Like all the Six Flags had them, most every big parks had them at that point, but Disney wanted it a little different. And Intamin wasn't about to retool just for Disney. So they literally delayed the opening of the Tower of Terror until the patent expired. And they didn't have to pay royalties. So that, and then at one point, then after it expired, there were 30 companies around the world. There were several thousand free falls around the world. And I was telling Phil, I have scared more people than anybody else in the world if you measure it by giving a shot of adrenaline, even more than Hitler, because when Hitler was alive, there was only 2 million people, or 2 billion people on the planet. Now there's 7. So I've gotten a lot more than 2 billion to drop on the free fall. So that's kind of the story. In fact, there's one of the free falls. And this is an interesting one because before Tammy and I got married, we got married in Turtle Island, Fiji. We kind of took a vacation in Australia because there was an amusement park trade show. We go to, this is at Queensland. And I knew everybody in Queensland at the park there because my son, when he was in college, I got him a job there for the summer, and he was the foreman on the corkscrew roller coaster because I had licensed manufacturing in Australia to build the corkscrew roller coaster. But this ride, my wife says, she had ridden the one in Carowinds. She says, no way. I said, no free fall, no Jerry. And she believed me. Today she'd never believe me. So she got to ride this. And the best part is we got all the way up the top. And they keep you up the top for a couple minutes, which seemed like a long time. And Tammy said, I can see China. And this one is, I forget.
48 stories.
48 stories high.
48 stories.
But the best part is there's an old couple, this old lady sat right beside me. Well, I can't use the right language. This old lady, I wasn't saying this to her, I was just teasing Tammy, and I said, what's that noise? It's not supposed to do that. And this old woman screams out, drop this blank, 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 blank. I mean, she just let it go. So that was our free fall in Australia. To give you an idea how big and popular they are, there's the top 10 tallest, and they're from roughly 30 stories to the tallest one's 45 stories. So that gives you an idea how big they've grown. Now, all the ones that I got royalties on, these were built after the patent expired. The ones I got royalties on were all, I think, like 120 feet high. That's the most common ones. What I'm working on now is a totally different design. Well, all I've done in the wind turbine thing is take technology from the amusement industry and applied it to the wind turbine industry. 80% of all the maintenance problems on the big wind turbines are gearboxes, okay? And most of those big gearboxes, like the typical GE 1.5, that's the most common big one out there. That gearbox is $250,000. It's the size of an SUV, and it's got to be changed out with a rebuilt one every 3 to 5 years. Huge expense. All your big Ferris wheels in the world run with a rubber tire drive on the bottom. Now, I have the gear, you have to have that ratio to get the generator to go fast. The gearbox on a GE 1.5 is about 85 to 1. Diameter of my drive tires to the diameter rim is about 85 to 1. So I've got the same ratio there. But a lot of other things I've changed. The biggest thing is everything on this can go in a 40-foot container. Remember, I was building up to 75 traveling Carnival amusement rides a year when I was manufacturing. So we got very good at folding stuff up and putting things in there. So everything, so we eliminate that cost of those big blades going down the highway and so forth. Okay? Our blades are much different than like you see on a typical. We're much, much smaller. Our blade is 2 meters at the axle and 1 meter out to the tip, and only 8 inches wide thick in the center. It's very much like a a glider airplane wing. And we can do this because we're supported at both ends, so we don't have that cantilevering. Okay? And I actually had the shape of the blade designed by DAR, which is a company out in Kansas City that designs helicopter blades and fighter airplane wings. And then Georgia Tech has been phenomenal helping all this. They did a white paper, and the energy output of this, the GE 1. Okay, theoretical energy you can get out of a blowing wind is 59%. That's theoretical. The GE 1.5 gets 43, 44%. According to both DAR and Georgia Tech, confirmed by Georgia Tech, this is getting slightly over 50%. So it's more efficient for the area. The other thing, everything in here is designed to where it can be manufactured in local welding shops, fiberglass shops, where they build boats, or just Greenville's got places here that everything here can be built. Biggest thing we don't have here is wind. The first prototype, this has been a long process because what I've done is I've spent all the time in taking, whether it's the blade pitch controls, simplifying it, making it maintenance minimal, making it easy to manufacture, getting the hours out, making it just bulletproof. Remember, I had 18 years of building amusement rides for traveling carnivals. The traveling carnivals are nothing but another big structure that moves like this, that hauls little kids and middle-sized kids and old people of all sizes. And guess who they have for help? Most of them can't even qualify to get into the Army. And they have to set them up. They have to operate them. They have to maintain them. They have to get them down the highway. So keeping it simple was kind of, so this is why it took 5 years to get to this development point. The first one's being built out in northeast Colorado, where it's very flat, semi-arid, and very windy. Because we'll leave it set up right at the factory, because the factory can use $10,000 to $12,000 worth of electricity a month. And by having the wind there, if you get a wind turbine certified, you can kind of double the sales, because some banks and some insurance companies require certification. The certification means there's a separate company that they check it for safety, they check it for electrical output, and they check it for noise. So we'll go through all that. We're not worried about the noise because our blades are so much thinner, they have far less drag, and drag is noise. And the reason I went for 5 blades, noise is directly proportional to speed. And 5 blades runs 3/5 as fast as a 3-blade wind turbine. So I think we're in great shape on all that. But this has been a long process, and it's not a 40-hour week. And it's a lot of time is just being creative, laying in bed at thinking, and coming up with different ways of doing different things, and then trying to figure out which one's the best. And getting input from a lot of different people. University of South Carolina put together a graduate program where they had a bunch of students work a semester and look at where the market is for these around the world. That is a big help. I mean, I can go on and on all the help I've gotten. So, just to give you a little bit more on the, oops, let's go back. I'll get this down pat shortly. Okay, this is the axle up the top of the tower. Think of that as nothing but a big bicycle wheel. Okay. Here's the platform where this one has 4 generators on it. Well, you can see 3 of the generators. Those things in the front, they're not engaged right now, but those are the tires that run against the rim. Now, once I get these operating worked out, I've already worked with some people to take these offshore. And the reason I put 2 of them on a barge, I turn one clockwise, one turns counterclockwise, because anytime a big wheel is turning, it has a gyroscopic effect, so it counteracts it. Now, I only have 1 anchor line, so I let the wind blow the thing downwind. So I don't have to turn, they call this the yaw. I don't have to have a yaw bearing to keep it turned in the wind. Anytime you anchor a boat, it always blows downwind. Now, on the back of the bars, there is a stern thruster that helps keep it exactly into the wind all the time. Okay? I'll give you a little idea of the size. That's a person there on the front. Okay? But back to carnival ride technology. If a hurricane is coming, we're estimating it's about 4 hours. So you have a tugboat go out within 4 hours. You can have the thing looking like that, and you tow it. You don't go to shore. You don't go into a bay. You got a big ship out there. You go at a right angle to the projected path of a hurricane, because hurricanes normally aren't so huge in diameter. You can escape the hurricane, and the next day you come back up, hook back up there. You leave there's a buoy that stays floats and survives the hurricane, and it holds your anchor line and your electrical lines ashore. Other big advantages, the cost of electricity in the Caribbean is 35 to 65 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay, you're paying probably 12 cents a kilowatt hour at your home here. And the reason it's so expensive, down there, all of the electricity is produced by diesel generators. Okay? So you can put these down there, but also opens up a bunch of islands now that no one lives on because there's no fresh water. At nighttime, when you got surplus electricity, instead of storing electricity, you have reverse osmosis equipment in the barge. You make fresh water. So now you pump electricity and fresh water onto the island. And fresh water is pretty expensive. Maybe I should ask Phil first, because you heard give a talk the other day to your group, and it was totally different than what I did today, because that's just the way I am. I just kind of try to go with the flow. What else would you like for me to touch on?
No, I think that you're right on the spot here. So you're talking about what you're doing with the wind turbine, which is kind of a cool thing. You led us through some of these other components. And we have time from the audience for a couple of questions. If someone else has got a question on how do you get from point A to point B, let's see if we can field it out of the audience. Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question I asked you before. I'd like to hear this audience for them to hear your answer. I ask you, how is it that carnival theme parks are able to get riders to their machines, and transit companies can't get people to use transit?
What he's really saying, transit companies have a system that takes people from point A to point B where they have to go. A carnival ride is nothing but a transit system that goes from point A to point A. Okay, right back where they came from.
And they pay for it again and again.
And it's phenomenal the number of people that ride amusement rides. There are several billion amusement rides taken in the U.S. every year. And so on. Well, boy, we could get into a lot of psychology here, can't we?
It's fun.
So much of mass transit, if you look at, maybe one of the best examples is what happened to the Greyhound buses, okay? There is so damn much fear caused by modern media that people are afraid to be around strangers where there's not an environment that's safe, okay? And this is why, if you look at most of the dark rides on amusement parks and so forth, they put you in your own car. So you're compartmentalized. So people, if you put a group of them together and you put them out where, and these are strangers, people, it's all perceived fear, okay? People are afraid of amusement rides because it's perceived fear. I guarantee you, there's many, many, many more people killed going to and from a county fair than are ever killed at the county fair. Okay? Yet let someone be killed at the county fair and it makes news nationwide. I had a good friend who's the expert on terrorism. And he says, you know, I got some friends that drive back and forth to Europe all the time. What can I do? I'm really worried about this. He says, I just have one answer. On the way to the airport, fasten your seatbelt. Because almost nobody gets killed on commercial flights. Given the number, I mean, right now, there's at least 3,000 commercial flights in the air over the United States. So it is extremely safe to do that. But I guarantee you, people going to and from those, we don't even think about it, but we're killing, you know, probably 100 people a day in this country on the highways. So it's all perceived deal. So you got the same thing, getting people in mass transit. Do they perceive it's safe? And do they perceive they can get back when they want to? Whether we like it or not, we like our freedom. Okay?
I think we're out of time. Everybody,
Okay.
thank you for Jerry. A round of applause for Jerry Barber. Before you sit down, questions, and of course you're still mic'd up and all that, but let me ask you a question. So you're still working all the time, right? You're working on this. You don't seem like a guy's vacationing a whole lot.
If I don't perceive I'm needed, I figure I've got 24 months left to live.
So, but I mean, you're actively involved, and it brings me to a thing I think that, to me is just completely remarkable, and I want to bring up. You got a birthday coming up.
I do.
And what's that number going to be when you?
75.
You're going to be 75 years old.
Next month.
Next month. Isn't that awesome? I mean, he's an icon, my hero. Thanks. A round of applause for Jerry Barber.